Loving this weather.
It's pretty awesome. I think buyers and sellers love this weather too. We get busy every time this year.
So do realtors, because it keeps them off the beach and then they look at real estate.
There you go. So Mike, I got to hand it to you. You came up with today's topic.
Son of a gun. Every now and then I'll fool you.
I'm very happy and I very much appreciate it.
Good.
You know, we had quite a bit of positive feedback from last week's video where it was just you and I, and people really love to see what it looked like from your perspective, being a broker. I thought that was really cool. Did you have any feedback on that from last week?
Yeah. Actually, positive feedback, and it's always nice to get different perspectives on a topic. You guys see a different angle of these topics than I do. I see the same topics, but from a different side. And so when you pull it all together, I think it's very informative to people.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. Dad, last week you weren't available to be on here with us, but Mike was pretty eloquent when I asked him about what was it like to be a broker, what was the daily task like, what was the main concerns. We're gonna be posting that on YouTube soon, so if anyone missed it.
I would have loved to have seen that.
He was great. It wasn't planned at all. It was just like, I don't know, it's like he had been waiting for that question all his life.
This is the best
because
I don't know.
Because Don wasn't here last week, we volunteered him for everything.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
It's not my fault. I did it.
So today's topic is something that not a lot of people deal with this, but it's a very real risk. And Mike, you said you've been getting a lot of this recently. It's obviously a topic that's top of mind for you, and it's the vacant lot listings. Going back to last week, the broker's perspective, tell me how you interact with this. Why has this become kind of the topic du jour?
Don and I have seen a lot through the years, and we have all kinds of stories regarding vacant lots. But in the last 18 months, what I'm seeing often is fake sellers. They're working Southwest Florida. Each one, there's similarities in a lot of them, but and one similarity is that a lot of them will not meet you in person. It's all done electronically. They'll come up with various reasons why they can't meet with you or even have a Zoom meeting. Fake sellers is probably one of the scariest topics I've seen come down the pike.
So what's scary about it? What happens? I'm going to be the naive person here. I'm going to be ignorant. What happens?
Well, some of these law firms are actually closing these deals and the person doesn't even own the property. So
that's the risk, right? That's the problem.
It is scary because someone's going to lose money. And by the time it's discovered, can you claw the money back? I mean, it's so each real estate firm has to determine what their precautions are that they take. And, some of them, I think we would divulge, some we won't, because we don't want the criminals to know what we're doing. And I think you go through the same deal on your end.
Yeah.
It is very scary. I've seen them work the Marco Island area in a big way. I've seen them work Cape Coral. We've had one or two attempts in Naples. Now, when we take a listing, one of the procedures that we put in place is we will research and contact the actual owner of the property to verify that they did in fact list their property with us.
Oh, that's great.
One of the procedures that we put in place, but in talking with some of my peers around town, good firms have been burnt, and these are good firms, honest firms. It's a scary topic.
So here's the scenario. You have a real estate agent that is contacted They tend to like, text message or WhatsApp. Kimberly mentioned that in the comments. And they make that initial effort. And then the funny thing is they quickly go to just text message or just WhatsApp. They might do a phone call initially, but it doesn't last very long. Because they want to keep it as streamlined as possible. And it's always a little fishy. The problem is when, we're kind of more susceptible to that kind of fraud. We're not paying attention, we're busy, or even worse, we're not busy at all. They tend to prey on the agents that are less busy, and because you're more susceptible to believe it, because you kind of want to believe it.
Well, you think about the timing of this, Christian. This whole thing surfaced when listings were at a low. So they knew people really wanted listings. So so they're very good at figuring out the timing of trying to dupe people. It's a scary one.
So I want to run through some of the questions. We'll kind of talk everybody through the process here. And then Mike, we'll go over some of the stuff that you wanted to ask. So sure. Someone reaches out to you, says, hey, I want to list the house. I want to list the land. I heard about you online. I think you're great. I'd say that's the first red flag. Unless you truly have a great online presence, they're probably going to try to brown nose you, and that might be somewhat of a fable. Most agents don't have the greatest online presence. And if you do, then you can kind of check the box there. But, you could ask, well, which website did you find me on? And, what did you like specifically? What, did anyone refer you? I would say in general, we want people that are referrals as opposed to just cold reach outs. The cold reach outs, I don't know what the statistics are, but they're probably a lot lower on closed deals than it would be if it was a true referral. Mike, honestly, if I was hiring someone, I would ask if anyone knew them first. I would want some sort of, communication, some contact with them. Maybe they're a neighbor, maybe they're in church with me, or someone I've personally worked with before, a friend worked with before.
Even check their phone number to make sure it's where they say they are.
And some of the things that agents have relied on are the bare minimum, and that's the thing we have to worry about. We don't want to do the bare minimum. Vicky mentions there are many fake buyers on WhatsApp with supposedly many millions to spend, but they only want to use WhatsApp. When I ask how they found me, they say Zillow, and I don't advertise there. So I believe it's all fraud. I would agree, Vicky. That's a very good basis. I call it the Craigslist barrier or the Facebook marketplace barrier. You kind of need that experience where, on Craigslist forever, they would reach out and someone would reach out and say, hey, I'm a Kenyan prince and I have millions of dollars to spend and I'm gonna email it to you or something. It's like, wait a second.
That was 20 years ago. I have $20 million. I want to give it to you and buy something, and
right.
Your fee will be $1 million.
It's the same fraud over and over again, and so you kind of have to get good at sniffing out this stuff. Vicky, I think that's a really good way to sniff it out. And so that's kind of the first thing. I think you got to kind of push back a little bit. You need the standard, hey, how'd you find out about me? If it's Zillow, what listing was it? Why did someone refer you? Are you going to be here in person? That I've never done a closing I've never done a closing in that particular neighborhood before. Like, how'd you find my number? All those things, we should meet, or, can you send me proof of funds? I don't think it's unreasonable to push back slightly to see if the person is real. I think if you push back nothing, if you don't push back, you're probably going to you're more susceptible to that sort of fraud.
I go by, if it seems too good to be true, it is. If they're offering full price without even trying to lowball it a little bit, I don't trust it. If the seller's from another country, or if the area code doesn't match where they supposedly are, I don't trust it. I've had friends, frankly, on Marco Island who I had an opportunity to buy land for like half of what they thought it was worth. It's BS, and it was. So if your intuition goes off, if you've been doing this 20, 30 years, your intuition is based on your cumulative knowledge of all these years, A lot of times for me, it's something that the other side didn't do that will trigger me.
There's some flags to watch out for, and a couple of flags to watch out for is if the seller is really motivated to sell the property quickly and they're willing to come in well below the market price to move it quickly. So that
Yeah.
urgency is something to look out for. Uh, the the topic itself just I'm jumping around here. I had another thought in my mind. The other thought was a lot of times they will approach an agent, let's say a Marco Island realtor, to list a property that's outside of their area, Cape Coral. Can you list my Cape Coral lot? Now, why are they reaching out to a Marco Island realtor to sell a Cape Coral or Fort Myers Beach lot? I mean, that's
it
where
doesn't make sense.
your radar
Oh,
kicks.
yeah.
And what you could do in that scenario is you could say, hey, I'm honored that you reached out to me. I don't think I'm the right fit for Cape Coral lot, but why don't I refer you to someone who could be? And so you reach out to a Cape Coral agent. You say, hey, look, I got this cold call. I don't know if it's real or not, but you're the Cape Coral expert. I'd rather you work on this. Let's double check and make sure that this is legitimate. But then maybe get a referral. I think that's how you would normally do it. You wouldn't just blindly list it.
Well, and you can also throw out the terms of the listing agreement, how the realtor is supposed to educate themselves about the property, and this is beyond the purview of their normal, neighborhood that they farm. So if it's beyond, it'd be like you and me, Chris, trying to do a type of law that we don't do customarily. It'd be unethical for us to try to do, say, labor law when we don't do it every day. It doesn't really differ for realtors. Say, I'm not the best person for this. There's nothing wrong with saying that.
Keep in mind that Florida Realtors just bought the rights to a product called Forewarn, which can help you research someone.
How do they access that, Mike?
You've got to sign up for it. It took me about 25 seconds to sign up for it, so it's pretty easy.
So it would take everyone else about 5 seconds. That's good.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, Christian, didn't you run across something where we have where a seller can be remotely notarized and witnessed? Don't we have a service for that?
We'll get into that in a little bit. But I think the basics are pretty, simple. You don't want to ignore your typical standards for how you get a listing. You got to go through the process, no matter if it's a big deal or a little deal. I think one of the risks is, the big deal that you're blind to the risk. It's like, oh my goodness, that's a challenge. But you're also blind to the super small deals because you're like, well, if it sells, it sells. I don't, whatever. It's not going to change my life either way. So I'm not going to put in the effort. I think both of those are potential red flags because
I try to tell it to go to somebody I know if they're from Georgia. And this happened to me. The last one I had was somebody in Georgia. And I said, oh, good. You're in Georgia. You can go to Campbell and Brannon where Christian used to work. And I also asked for a copy of his passport and his driver's license, but he says, well, I'm going to have trouble coming down there and all that. So no problem. We have the biggest law firm in the state and they can see you. And once I did that, he disappeared.
Yeah, and so Kim mentioned that they push back slightly and then the sellers tend to disappear at that point. So don't be afraid to push back. Now we've modified, we've increased our process for doing these things. And so I'll kind of go through that. So number one is you push back a little bit. You demand to talk to them on the phone. If anything sounds off, you start asking some side questions. How'd you find out about me? Verify that part of it. Who in town do you know? How did you end up down here? How long have you owned the property? You can quickly, if you get them on the phone and really trigger these questions, they're not going to have time to research it. They either know it or they don't. Kind of reminds me, Dad, when I would impersonate you to get a credit card fee waived. Mom would hand me the phone and be like, here, you're your dad. So I'd be like, hi, I'm Don Ross, and if I was prepared, I might have the answer.
I didn't know this was going on.
Oh yeah. What's your mother's maiden name and all that good stuff. But you want to get them on the phone so you can ask that in real time, and one of the things I look at is I'm going to go on the Collier County website or Lee County website. I'm going to pull the deed. I'm going to see what title company or law firm did it. I'm going to see the date. If it's Sam Saad's office or Tom Conroy's office, I'm going to call them and be like, hey, do you have records of this person? What's the phone number? What's their email? Mike, the idea of mailing something to the actual owner, I think that's what we have done as well. You and I kind of shared forms in that sense. And because anyone can impersonate or fake a passport or driver's license, not putting myself on the list, but I know someone that when they were 18 may have had a fake driver's license, possibly. And so if that was just to get beer, imagine what it would be to get a house or to get a vacant land.
Yeah,
So
point
I've
out one
actually,
thing, Chris. I got to point out that we have had fake seller attempts with condos and single family homes.
yeah, it's
The
possible.
reason why they like lots is they don't have to grant access to the property.
yeah.
But
Right.
with a condo or a single family home, then they come up with a convoluted story on why you can't get in. So
Exactly. So
it,
this is a real thing. There's a lot of processes that we do to kind of thwart it. One time, I think it was a couple weeks ago, I I emailed or I looked up the person who owned it, and then I Googled that person, and I found that they owned a dairy farm in Indiana. And I called the dairy farm and said, "Hey, is Bob there?" And he called me back. Bob called me. He's like, "Yeah, I'm not selling. No, that's not me." I'm like, "Good." And so, we put it aside. We then alerted all the title companies nationally that, hey, this property is trying to be sold by a fake seller. Here's our proof. And then they put out an email to all the different law firms and title companies that they underwrite with. So there's a lot that we do in this case. We even had one where we transferred it out of the name that was on title so that it would kind of thwart a seller. And then I had them put some sort of physical barriers and signage on the property itself, because this was out in the Everglades essentially. And so they put up a fence, they put up a sign. They actually even listed it for sale, because if you list it for sale, well, now someone else can't necessarily list it for sale. So you can kind of protect yourself in a million different ways. You might even use that to get a listing. Imagine you hear from a client that's like, "Oh my gosh, we have this scare, someone tried to sell it." You could say, "Hey, let's put it on the market and I'll list it. We don't actually have to entertain offers, but it will keep someone else from being able to sell it without notifying." There's no way they could say they didn't have notice. So I kind of like that as maybe even a marketing technique. And then the last thing that we have access to at Ross Title, we are one of the initial testers and people that have signed up to partner with Certified. I'm actually wearing my certified garb today. I did that on purpose. Why don't I share my screen so you guys can kind of see how this works? So Certified is a tool that we've gotten very familiar with. We started working with them in order to share encrypted and secure and insured wiring instructions. And we still do that. So anytime a buyer wants wiring instructions from our office, we send them a portal link through Certified, and it insures the transaction up to $1 million, which, sometimes it doesn't cover the whole thing, but it certainly covers most of our closings. And so we use that on every buyer. You will never get an email from us with wiring instructions. But we've also started using it with fake sellers. So there's not only a send feature, but there's a collect feature. So we will collect wiring instructions from a seller on the front end, especially if it's something we're worried about. We'll send them a certified link and say, "Complete this." And Certified's technology is pretty cool, because what it does is number one, it gives us wiring instructions, secured, insured wiring instructions, but also it verifies where that seller is located. Do they have an IP block on their computer? Did they fail the in-person test, the liveliness test? Did they fail their identification test? And this technology is only getting more secure and more sophisticated. So it's pretty cool. And so they invited me to do a class last year, and then they invited me over to meet with them in person just a couple of months ago. This is a really cool webinar. I would highly recommend people watch it. I don't remember exactly how long it is. Looks like it's about an hour. It was great. And Tom Conkright, Dad, you and I have talked with him multiple times.
I talked to him years ago. A point I would emphasize: you can get more than $1 million worth of coverage if you want to pay the extra fee. So it can cover anything.
Yeah, it's a pretty cool system. I don't think enough title companies and law firms in town are using it. I think it's something that we're going to see across, the country sooner rather than later. Oh, look, there I am. Let's see if I can get to me. There I am. Look at that. It's awesome.
Yeah, I think the standard of care is going up. So if we don't all up our game a little bit, we could be held liable. And what a trick I use quite frequently is, my insurance underwriter requires me to do this extra investigation because of all the fraud that's out there. My broker requires it, or the lawyer for the law firm requires it. Blame us. I mean, if you get any pushback to some of these questions, just say it's a matter of insurance. And I sincerely think that the standard of care for closings and getting listings is shifting and putting more and more burden on the realtors and the lawyers and all of us.
So let's go to a couple of the questions. Monica had a great question. And this is something I haven't been asked before. What are your feelings about builders contacting listing agents to co-market the lots and where they place their sign along with yours on that lot? Have you seen that a lot, Mike?
I haven't seen a lot of it, to be honest.
So I've seen it a little bit on Marco, and I guess it's possible it's happening in Naples as well and elsewhere. But basically, the builder is wanting to put their sign saying, "Hey, market with us, and maybe build with us." And I think what I would be interested in if I'm a listing agent is, number one, I want to do some due diligence on that builder. What is their reputation? Is their license, up to date? What is their insurance? Let me go through the process because I don't want their bad name to impact my good name. I don't want it to make things worse. And I don't want to make it seem like I'm getting some sort of pay to play or setting up a buyer for failure. I would say that's the biggest risk. But if you overcome that, there's so many great builders in our community. If you overcome that and you're like, wow, how lucky am I to have this builder have interest? What will they do to this listing to promote it better? How can they add something? And is this something the seller would see as a value add? I could imagine some builders would be great at this. They might have a design. Maybe they can invest in putting together a design, some sort of proposed build. I see that a lot around here where it's kind of like a hybrid spec build because they're like, hey, we've got plans, we've got a builder, here's the cost. Could be really cool, but only if you did your due diligence on the front end.
What's happened in the past is the builder would pay the realtor a commission, and there was a lawsuit over this in Pelican Bay. They had their preferred builders program. So I think NABOR now has a form that if the builder is paying the listing agent a commission, that you disclose that to the buyer. You have to have disclosure to the buyer if that's happening. And yeah. I wouldn't be shy in asking for a commission, honestly, because I wouldn't
be shy to ask for that. I would make sure that you and the builder discussed, hey, what if a buyer goes with you? Or what if my seller decides to hire you? How can we make that work? And then I would run it by an attorney to make sure that that's legal and that all the T's are crossed, I's are dotted.
I mean, because you need it to be mutually beneficial. The builder wants to build and make a profit, and the realtor wants to get paid. I mean, they're marketing both the property and the builder, essentially. So,
yeah. Mike, you had a couple questions for me. Should I get a seller's disclosure statement when it is just, quote unquote, just a lot? What's the hypothetical on that question?
I've got a war story on this one, and Don might remember this. When I first started, we sold a lot up in Bonita, a beautiful lot. Some nice trees on it. It was cleared. Plenty of room for a house, etc. But when they started digging into the lot to build a home, they started pulling out engines, tires.
Oh God!
Apparently, it used to be a junkyard. And all the stuff was buried underground and years go by. And so, the question is whether or not the seller was aware of that when he sold the property. Don't know. If you had a seller's disclosure statement, that might help. But I would think something as material as that, if the seller was aware of it, Don, wouldn't they have to disclose that?
They would have to disclose it, and that actually came up when my father sold 13 acres to the state of Florida, actually. And it was a former dump. Typically, you want to disclose it. You don't have the same disclosure requirements with commercial deals as you do residential, but nonetheless, you don't want them to trip upon this later and come up with some novel theory of law and come after you. They should pick it up on the phase 1 or the phase 2 audit of the property. At one point, it was a
Well, and the
dump.
key is, does the seller actually know? And that's the kind of the key
Yeah.
basis for any seller's disclosure. If the seller knows, yeah, they need to
They
disclose
should
something like
disclose.
that.
Because the law, I think, is expanding on what the seller has to disclose anyways. I mean, if we have to disclose something that happened 2 years before the closing that's been totally fixed, you pretty much have to disclose everything.
Yeah, I think my answer to a seller on that one is I would propose the idea to a seller and say, hey, on every listing, we always do a seller's disclosure. And I know it's a vacant lot, but let's go through it together. So anytime a seller was gonna fight me on something, I'd say, well, let's just make sure none of this rings true. Are you aware of this? Are you aware of that? And Mike, I don't think, is this a former dump is on a seller disclosure form, but I like the idea of just having the conversation, going through it. I think anytime a seller fights me on doing a seller disclosure, I want to prompt them, all right, well, maybe we'll just go through it. When was the house built? And, oh, that's, 1968. I wonder if there's lead. Do you ever know about any lead? And go through it. I think that is very valuable. We're doing it to save the seller from themselves. They don't
Well, that's the
realize
point.
that, but
Expression. I don't think most sellers appreciate that the point of the thing is to protect the seller.
right, I agree.
Obviously, it does things for the buyer, but it also protects the seller. And if you have these closings with no inspections whatsoever, part of the Johnson v. Davis thing is the defect cannot be readily observable. Well, it's not readily observable if you're not giving the other side an opportunity to do an investigation. If they got no investigation, it almost puts more legal weight on the seller's shoulders. So, I tell these sellers, protect yourself, over disclose. If something else happens after the closing that prompts that buyer to need money, he's going to make stuff up to come after you.
So here's the next question. What else can go wrong with a lot listing? And this is a great question. And if you don't mind, I'll take the lead on this one. In my background, I worked for a company that built subdivisions all throughout the Southeast. I think in the couple of years I was doing it, we developed almost 5,000 lots. So we did a lot of this stuff. And typically the process would be one of the two things. Either we were buying a half completed subdivision and just kind of completing the development, finishing the roads, putting in utilities, selling off the lots, maybe finishing an amenity center or something like that. That's pretty straightforward. There's a ton of due diligence. The big thing on that is you got to walk the property. You got to know each lot. There could be a reason why a certain lot wasn't developed. Maybe it's filled with water. Maybe there's too many trees, or what they call champion trees or legacy trees that the county's going to make you replace if you were to remove them. Like the great oaks and the cypress trees, things like that could have some sort of impact on you financially. So I had a deal once where we bought like 100 acres, and like, I don't know, 10 different lots were completely underwater, and it was going to cost $50,000 each lot to fill it up with fill. And the lot was only worth $10,000. So that was a huge mistake, where it was like, man, if we just needed to walk every lot and check it. We need to see the corners, how far deep does it go back? And that's expensive. It takes time and energy, very much worth it. And then the other type of development we would do is the vacant lots, vacant land where there's no plan. It's all possibility. And again, I remember I did a deal. It was one of the first deals I ever did. And we had a meeting about it. And we had a project manager who came in from the field. He was all dirty and everything. And he's like, well, what about mitigation credits or stream credits, I think he called it. And I said, stream credits? There's no stream on this property. He goes, Did you walk it? He had me. I didn't. I was clean cut and perfect. I didn't walk it. So there was a stream, and the only way you would have known it is to walk it because it was all wooded. There was no way to see it from an aerial footage. So I think, to me, the biggest things you need to know about a lot listing is you got to be there. You got to go. You got to figure it out. You got to double check and check each lot. Yep, got it. This one's the same, or and then what you'll find, what we found occasionally was, oh my gosh, there are huge rocks, huge boulders in middle of the property, or there's a lake in the middle of the property, or there's, a dump. Mike, to your story, I had a deal where it was an illegal dumping ground as well in Cobb County. Trying to remember the city, but it was Cobb County, and there were 25,000 tires buried underground. 25,000 tires. And so I only found out about it because I was walking the property and I tripped over one. And then I called the city and I said, hey, what do you know about this property? I found some tires down there. And he goes, oh yeah, that's a known dumping ground. And the developer, when he wanted to develop it, was just pushing all the tires into the middle and dealing with it later. And he's like, we've got a big red flag on this property because we'll never give you a permit unless you remove every single one of them.
How about protected species, Chris? Is there a study for that?
Yes, there's a species. You mentioned an environmental study, and that's kind of part of it. I don't know if they call it an ES1 or ES2. But yeah, there's definitely a species test.
Owls, turtles, the condor, whatever.
Yeah, I'll give you an example. We had a 500-acre deal in Birmingham, Alabama, and they didn't find any endangered species, but they found their habitat, and that was just as bad. They found, I think they called them like gray trees, or no, it was a gray bat, and there were these trees that were specific for that gray bat nesting. And so they said this whole area was, I don't know, 50 acres.
Gray bats. I mean, that's amazing.
I've never heard of a gray bat. I thought they were black. Who knows?
But you think that's part of a phase 1 audit, though?
I think it is. Or even if it isn't, the same company will try and sell you the species one. And the way we would do things is, you get burned once trying to save money, and you never do it again. I would order a title exam day one. I don't care what the cost is. Title exam, we need to know what restrictions are on that property, because we would plan to put, let's say we wanted 10 homes on 10 acres and every home's going to get 1 acre. And then you do a title search and you find out, oh, no, 5 acres are reserved for churches only. It's like, well, now the property's worth half. And I've spent 20 grand doing due diligence on other things and I didn't know. So title search, I think a survey is money that you have to spend on a vacant lot or vacant land. You have to. I don't care if you're going to walk away from the deal. You can't close on it without knowing your boundary lines. You can't close on it unless you know that the neighbor's not encroaching over a property line. You don't want to walk into a fight. I think that you learn the lesson the hard way there. That Birmingham deal, we were buying it from US Steel and we walked away. It was like 11:50 p.m. Our deadline to walk away was midnight. And we walked away. We spent $144,000 in due diligence, and we walked away because of a couple of different things. Now, interestingly, Mike, it was a mistake. We shouldn't have walked away, but whatever.
There are a lot of war stories with these lots. I mean, Don remembers in the early days of Marco Island, you'd go down these streets and you'd have 10 lots in a row, vacant lots, and realtors a lot of them will hire a sign company to put a sign up and not check up on it. And the sign company can make a mistake. They can put the sign on the wrong lot. And we've seen that before.
Yeah.
I had a friend buy the wrong property, or he thought it was the wrong property.
I had a closing where they bought an existing house and then they partitioned it. They split the lot into 2. And so you're seeing this a lot in the estates of our town. So in Golden Gate Estates and other, Logan Woods, where they're buying, historically they were 5-acre parcels, and they're cutting them in half into 2.5 acre parcels, which is fine. But if you're the listing agent and you're asked to come out and put up a sale sign, you better make sure your legal description is correct, because you can no longer use the legal description from the prior closing, because they bought 5 acres. We're cutting it in half. We're only buying 2.5. So the seller in that scenario will need to have a survey. They need to officially cut the property in half, have 2 different tax IDs. I saw one where they didn't record the split. And when they did the listing, they listed the original legal description, and they didn't realize it until after they had signed. So the seller comes in and signs, the buyer signs, he's paying, $500,000, but the property was probably worth double that. And no one knew that the legal description was for the whole thing, including the buyer. The buyer just assumed it was the whole thing. It was the developer that was trying to pull a fast one. Everyone got sued. Listing agent got sued, seller got sued, attorney got sued. It was avoidable, completely avoidable. You have to know what you're selling.
Let
Absolutely.
me give you a war story of after they close on the lot. I'm aware, and thank God it wasn't our firm, but I'm aware of someone who bought a lot, went out personally and put a pink ribbon around every tree they wanted to save on the lot, and then brought in an excavator to remove everything else. The excavator comes in and
Pink ribbons don't sound good, Mike.
they eliminate all the pink ribbon trees and leave everything else.
Was this you, Mike?
It was not our firm, but this is one I heard through a competitor. But I mean, things happen, and that's why you want to stay involved in the transaction. And you brought up, Christian, a great point. Walk the property. Make sure you know what you're getting.
Yeah, that was a lesson I learned the hard way. I mean, this is not a job you can do from your computer. Luckily, my job, I can usually do mine from the computer. But if you're selling, if you're the real estate agent, if you're the buyer, if you're the seller, you got to know your property. And if there's something that needs to be disclosed, you have to disclose it. Actually, to your point, Mike, I had an issue, and I thought this is a simple issue, but it really caused a lot of disruption. The surveyor came out and staked the property, and they had pink ribbons on some of the stakes, and they had yellow ribbons on other stakes. And the neighbor was so angry, just furious, because he's like, that's not the property line. That's not the property line. That's not the property line. And they were fighting for weeks. So they call me, and they're about to go to blows. The cops are getting called. And I said, well, the yellow ones are not the property line. I agree. That's just the monument. That's the marker. That's the point of beginning. That is not the property line. I go, oh.
You know where you get in trouble with those property lines is when one of the property owners wants to put a fence up. I've seen problems with fences through the years.
Totally. So the weird thing about fences is that you're not supposed to put them on the property line, right? If you put anything on the property line, it's almost shared by both property owners. So it's not his fence or her fence, it's their fence. And that's a problem. That's not good, because if he paid for it and he put it up and now it's theirs, he can't control it anymore. So what he's supposed to do is you put it a couple of inches inside your property line. Even weirder, most people assume you're supposed to connect fences. So the neighbor's fence, my fence, might as well just bring it together. As soon as I bring it together, that is an encroachment. Now you're going to have a survey issue, and that's something that's going to come up on your closing. So it sounds like a simple thing, and really we can usually talk our way out of it, but technically this is a problem. This isn't. I don't know. I hope there's a good solution some point for that stuff. Someone mentioned, Helen mentioned, new construction spec home at Valencia Trail. The sales rep said no survey at the moment. The builder will mail the survey after closing. Does it sound correct? I wouldn't want it after closing. Typically on these builder contracts, the builder is supposed to provide the survey to the buyer at or prior to closing, and the buyer pays for it. So I would double check the contract and see, am I permitted to get that survey prior to closing, and if they haven't delivered it, can I delay closing? Because getting the survey after closing, that doesn't really help, right, Dad? That doesn't
No.
help us at all.
My lender is going to want the survey exception deleted from the policy, so it's going to be absolutely necessary when they're getting a loan.
Good point. Yeah. So the only way you can get a truly clear title policy, especially a lender's title policy, would be to have a survey. So yeah, I would say that's not normal, Helen. I would double check the contract and say, all right, when am I supposed to get my survey? And if the seller's not going to deliver it prior to closing, maybe the buyer should get their own prior to closing. That sounds right, Mike.
What about when you have a listing and a buyer walks the property and gets hurt? Let's say he gets bit by a snake on the property, or steps into a hole and twists their ankle or whatever. I know I've seen one or two of those through the years.
Well, I remember a few agents who went through that. I mean, our listing agreement requires the seller to make the property safe. So I would tell any realtor who's showing property to let the seller know they're showing property on a certain day. And that, if they have any, jewelry or, pharmaceuticals in the house or anything unsafe, like a ditch in the front yard, that needs to be made safe for this visit.
Yeah, and so that's the listing agreement. That's how a listing agent can kind of protect themselves. You also kind of need to look at your sales agreement. And this is not just a risk with vacant land, but it would be a risk with any property. What if someone trips going up the stairs? I believe the buyer, is indemnifying the seller against most of those things, unless it's a known hazard and they didn't do anything to account for it. If you've got, like you mentioned, Mike, a big hole, let's say that big hole is in the sidewalk and you just kind of left it, right? And it's an easy trip hazard. You've tripped on it 100 times. I think you need to let them know. I think you need to protect the area. I think you need to get it fixed. Otherwise, you might get yourself sued, the seller at least. So I think somewhere in this contract it has where they kind of, take on that liability, as long as it's not a nuisance, like an attractive nuisance. That sound right, Dad?
Yeah, the attractive nuisances are more for children. I mean, so if you have a house under construction, holes and things like that a young child might be attracted to. And I would always use, you boys when you were younger and you go play trucks or cars, with the big pile of, dirt, that's an attractive nuisance.
Yeah, I'm looking at the contract right now, and I have a feeling it's in the due diligence and inspections area of that. But I think you just have to have a conversation with the seller. Hey, is there any problems with the property? Anything that we need to know about? Any hidden, issues? We could definitely help anyone if they wanted something more expansive that would protect them. So we went over surveys. If a potential buyer gets hurt, you had that. The other thing I wanted to mention was zoning. A lot of times zoning, it adds or takes away from the property's value. So if you intended to use this property for a single family home, well, you kind of need to make sure that it's going to be permitted for that. Or more realistically, if it's zoned for single family home and you wanted to put a barn, you probably will have problems. I had a client that you have a garage that looks like a barn. I had a client that wanted to put a big garage on the property. And the zoning laws said no, because it was single family home. He would have been allowed if he had one bedroom. So if he put in the plans 1 bedroom, then they would let him have the garage. And it's the weirdest zoning rule, but it is what it was. In fact, in Naples, there's a very expensive listing. I think it's like a $40 million listing, that it's a barn. It's got stables, it's got parking for tractors. It's incredible in 1 bedroom. Zoning, they require it. I think that is fascinating. We would buy vacant land, and most of it was agricultural, and we would want to turn it into a subdivision, and we would have to go through a zoning process. There might be public hearings, there's an application, and it's pretty extreme. We would have certain towns, certain projects, people from neighboring counties would come to the public hearings to say yay or nay to it. And it would force the buyer or the seller to put certain portions of it into conservation. It was wild. That whole world is different. And Vicky mentions that they kind of go through the same thing in Bonita. It must have 1 bedroom, bathroom, and a kitchen, and then you can have the giant garage. In fact, Mike, there's a house being built on Marco. It's all garages and like the tiniest front door. And I have a feeling it's the same thing. I think the guy's building across the street on the water, his normal house, and then his garages are across the street. Pretty cool. But that's zoning. The last thing I would say to a vacant land listing or an offer is make sure you put in the contract what you want it for. So, you know, this is contingent upon the house, a single family home, at least 2,200 square feet, and, you know, sewer and water hookups from the county, you know, contingent on all those things. So if you find out, nope, this is septic only, you can terminate. If you find out, nope, this is in conservation and you have to have cats and dogs, and, you know, no cows, then you could get out of the deal. I had one client that their whole thing was they wanted to build a house and they wanted a pool. And when they looked at it and they did all their due diligence, spent thousands of dollars, they realized they couldn't get a pool. Wasn't ever going to happen. But they had no outs in the contract. So they just had to walk away from their deposit. That was unfortunate, but what's the point of buying it if you can't get what you were planning on? So. Cool. All right. So thank you guys. I would remind you to keep your eyes and ears open. Vacant land listings are very challenging. Lean into us, lean into the people you trust, ask all those questions. I would look for companies that are using Certified. I think that Certified is a great product and really goes above and beyond. It increases the level of care that people have in this business. So I wish you luck. Thank you guys.
Thank you.